Welcome back to The Rebel's Edge. Pete Najarian and I will be breaking down what to expect from the Fed today. And it's not whether or not we cut. That's a foregone conclusion. But what will the Fed say after they cut at 2:30 Eastern Time? That's what we'll tell you right after this. Bam!
I got to tell you that thing is the greatest. Well, I tell you what, John, there's a lot going on today, and it seems like everybody's kind of sitting on their hands a little bit. I mean, the markets are moving around, but there's a lot of folks that when I look at volumes, I'm not sure we're quite as big as we've been in the past or whatever. But this is what happens on Fed Day.
Yeah, it is what happens, and this one in particular, Pete, because they could be on the verge of ripping up that script. A lot of people thought the script for 2024 was going to involve 7 rate cuts. Well, guess what? After today, it'll be 3. And I don't think they should have done a 50 bip cut in September, Pete. So if they would have done a quarter and then said we're going to be measured, and then they did another quarter after the election and said we're going to be measured, I think they wouldn't have painted themselves into the same corner that they've painted themselves into now.
Yep. And as you said at the start, this isn't just about the cut. It's about what do they say and what does Powell communicate and how well does he communicate? In other words, Johnny might have to nail himself down a little bit and not talk too much, because sometimes he stands up there and starts going off and it's like, hey man, stick to the script.
Yeah, well, and that's the macro minute really, folks, what we've just covered. And what do I think he's going to do? I think he is going to say that in 2025, we're going to be more measured because inflation is still out there. That 0.7% retail sales number, Pete, that's another reason that they will say, yeah, I don't know if we're going to do something in January. We might not do something until March. And that's where I think we are right now.
Yep, I agree with you. And as a matter of fact, just one last thing I would say is you just had the UK with their inflation. It was in line, still up 2.6%, John. So that's still sticky for them as well.
Let's talk about fantastic futures, Pete. Data released, basically, it had China at their slowest pace, the retail sales numbers out of China. But they're going to push spending. And I think it's one of the many reasons, Pete, that we're seeing gold down, because it's kind of a risk-on kind of day, at least here in the States, and it would be bigger if it weren't a Fed day.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that stands out right now, John, you've got the VIX in the 15s, so that's something. You've got the 10-year at a 4.4 or just below that. But all that being said, we haven't talked about this one in a while. How about nat gas? It's up 2.25% today. It's near the 2023 highs of 340 or right about there. October, we were at a 226. I would say that's on a pretty good chart to the bottom left to the upper right. This has been a very, very swift move from nat gas. A lot of people have forgotten about it.
Yeah. Well, I think you're exactly right, Pete. And by the way, we want to thank one of our sponsors, at least, Adambeam, because this is the last day of the ATOMBEAM, Adambeam offering. So one of the things we'd like to do, folks, is let you know that we put out a report. Tech hedge funds have a crush on utility stocks. You know why? Because anybody who wants to follow what's going on in the fabulous artificial intelligence space needs to understand about energy and how much it takes to run a data center. It's a lot more with AI than it is just on regular data center usage. So Adambeam addresses that problem, Pete. This is the last day of their offering. You can basically go out here and see that Adambeam packetizes that information that goes into a data center. And because it's in a packet, rather than a long string of that inquiry, it can actually take down the energy consumption of that. So we are investors in Adambeam, you can go to invest.adambeamtech.com, and you could be one of the many investors who gets in at this early stage of this company's, what we think will be meteoric growth. I'm going to say it. And as a shareholder, I can cheerlead this one all day long as I disclose it, Pete. So love the company. I think the people that are involved in the company are some of the best technologists in this space. And there'll be other imitators down the road. But by then, these guys, I think, will already be publicly traded and doing some pretty spectacular things. If you agree, go to invest.adambeamtech.com and you can be part of this story going forward. All right, Pete, let's dive into QUBT.
Yeah.
What is this? Well, it kind of plays off the Adambeam a little bit because it's quantum computing. You think that takes a lot of energy? You bet it does. Well, we talked about it, Pete, because we've had unusual activity last Friday. We had it again Monday. Last Friday, it was a $6 stock. Monday, it was an $8 stock. Take a guess where that one is today, folks. Well, we had it again, like I say, on Monday, and it jumped to 16 bucks on Tuesday. Well, today it goes all the way through what? Is it 22 a share right now, Pete? Pretty amazing stuff.
It's gotten as high as 24, John. It's been an absolute run. Obviously, 52-week highs is exactly what we're seeing. It's an incredible run. And when you look at the short interest in there, maybe some of those guys are feeling that squeeze. 12 to 15% of the stock out there, the outstanding stock, is being squeezed right now on this short side. It's about the quantum computing, of course. It's faster, it's this, that, and the other, and less power. So that combination definitely is something that people, I think, are concentrating on, John. This deal with NASA that we talked about yesterday, we had to talk about this one again because the stock just keeps on going, and we've had that UOA, that unusual option activity that keeps on flowing in here, keeps on ripping to the upside. You got to be disciplined in cases like this, but this has been an extraordinary move in a short part of time, and 6 times normal volume today, I would say. And we still got plenty of day left. So this is going to be an amazing volume day as well, John.
That's right. And you know what, Pete? It's only up 2,100% year to date. Right now, I did that calculation before the show, Pete. Now it's up 2,200% year to date.
Not bad.
That's year to date, folks. All right. Let's talk about another one that Pete has covered a lot when he talks with investors like you guys, and that's Oklo, OKLO. They formed a strategic relationship with Switch to deploy a 12 GW advanced nuclear power. This is a nuclear power startup, basically, that's backed by the OpenAI CEO Sam Altman. This one and Nano Nuclear, Pete, have just skyrocketed this year. They're 2 of the best performing stocks. And when you look at Oklo on a day like today, you're looking at it saying, God, why don't I own more of that?
Yeah, it's been on an unbelievable run, John. When you look at some of the numbers that they're talking about and the supply power through 2044, they won't even be able to start supplying it till 2027. But this is really interesting. We talked about nuclear. We've talked about the efficiencies of nuclear and the green spot of nuclear. All of that is what's playing into this whole thing, because I'll tell you what, we talk about it all the time, but you look at solar, you look at wind, they just don't have the same capabilities and not efficient enough. When you look at what Oklo's providing, this is something that's going to be huge in the future. They're not the only ones who do it, but there's plenty of them out there. They're doing it pretty well. And I would say what they're doing today with this partnership with Switch, or this offering with Switch, is something that's going to be huge in the future.
Absolutely, it will be, Pete. And obviously, just as we've said about Adambeam and others, anything that can address the increased demand for electricity at these data centers, because EV was already a huge pull. You knew there were days this year when California told people not to charge their Teslas because they just didn't have enough power. It would wreck the grid. Well, same thing's going to be happening, Pete, in 2025, 2026, 2027, as all of these data centers start really pulling hard because of AI and EVs. So again, that's worth paying attention to, and why you should get our special report on the electricity demands. All right, Worthington Industries, Pete. Shares higher. Company posted second quarter financial results. Net sales were down 8%, Pete, year over year to 274 million. But you know what? It was slightly better than Wall Street expected. And the decline was attributed to a deconsolidation of their sustainable energy solutions segment. So overall, Worthington, a very good report. But if on the surface you might have looked at it and said, maybe I should be selling here. If you did, you were dead wrong.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, when you look at the fundamentals, John, they're trading at a 15 PE. We don't say those numbers that low very often in the markets that we've had, especially with the runs that we've had. But when you got the earnings that they reported, those were great. They crushed it on the earnings. You talked about the revenue, so I'm not going to go over that. But building products, that's where the momentum is coming from. They do both consumer products and building products. This is a really great company that's really executing very well right now, John. Yeah, when you look at certain things, I look at the free cash flow, 560 million. Again, when you look at the fundamental side of this company, they've got a lot of things working in their favor, and it's still much closer to the 52-week lows than it is the 52-week highs. I think that creates an opportunity. I like what I'm seeing right now out of Worthington.
Well, let's wind it up, Pete, with JBL. Strong quarterly results, and I know you're going to like this, Pete, because their PE numbers are pretty mouth-watering if you're somebody that's used to seeing 30 and 40 PE stocks. When you look at one like Jabil and you look at their earnings per share, you say, they were expected to earn $1.88 and they came in with $2. That's really a thumbs up. And then revenue numbers also just blowing by expectations. I think this one was a huge outperformance and justifying people's faith in the company.
And I'll tell you what, John, the connections that they've got, in other words, they're a key supplier to Apple. Well, Apple, if anybody's taken note of late, just keeps going higher and higher and higher. It's not as sexy as it once was, right, John? Apple was always the name that everybody talked about. Right now, it's about all these other things, including Bitcoin, including AI, including all these different other parts of the market. But Apple, keep an eye on that one, because that stock has been surging, and I don't think a lot of people are paying as much attention as they usually do. To your point, though, Jabil, this is interesting because they do have a very appetite. It's a 15 PE. They've got $2 billion in free cash flow. Across the board, I like what we're seeing out of this company, what they've delivered. Yeah, $2 billion, not so bad. And the connection with AI technology, all of that, I think you put that together. This is a name that we used to hear about a lot, maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. But now we should be hearing even more because they're in the right spot. And I think they're taking advantage of that pretty well, John.
Well, and Pete, you did a great job describing Avago, AVGO, which we call Broadcom, of course, and how that might be supplanting some of the interest that people had just in NVIDIA. It's not going to be one person takes all, folks. There'll be a whole bunch of winners in the space. That's why you should be a subscriber to Market Rebellion and to Pete's Picks and so forth. All right, Pete, let's take a look at this because I thought this was another pretty funny one. Cook the Book Bets. I thought this guy did a great job. Let's let you guys listen and watch while we comment.
What's up, guys? What's up, little guy? Hey, this room's for big views only, buddy. Why don't you go on, skedaddle your ass back to where you came from? You know, it's funny you talk about viewership, NBA. How many viewers you have in the final last year? 11.5 million, boy! Yeah, boy! See, that's funny because we had 11.9 million for Alabama, Georgia just a couple weeks ago. Oh, yeah? Well, our wild card games a couple weeks ago averaged 2.8 million viewers. Boom. Buddy, we had twice that for Texas, Arkansas that gum week ago. Oh, yeah, well, I bet your stadiums aren't even that big. MetLife holds 82,000. Yeah, and freaking Dodger Stadium holds 52,000. Yeah. Yeah. Michigan Stadium holds 107,000. Yeah, well, your tailgating probably freaking sucks. You ever heard of the Grove at Ole Miss? Yeah. 100,000 people tailgating for a college football game.
100,000
Yo, dog, you should leave. Do what now? You said what now?
It's become the norm.
Dollars and cents, man. Just leave, man. Make it easy on all of us.
Make it easy on all of us.
Leave. Yeah, by the way, bro, anything you need, just holler, okay? Don't speak unless spoken to, because your ass is on the chopping block next, okay, Bubba? Welcome to the team. Hey, I don't know who that guy is.
Just the other day, John, we were talking about the NBA and the ratings being down 28%. And if you go back a little bit further, 10 years, down 48%. That says a lot. But, 100,000 these days in college football, there's quite a few different stadiums that can pack 100,000 in with no problem. Ohio State and Michigan. You can go down to Rocky Top at Tennessee. I mean, you can go around the country.
Alabama.
College football's king, right? I mean, it truly is. It more so than the NFL. The NFL likes the big stadiums, but they don't want them too big, because when things go south, which is kind of where I'm going next with the NFL, when they go south and things aren't looking so good, people are not going to go. They're just going to say the hell with it. They might have paid for the tickets, so if they use paid tickets, they have a pretty good number. But there's even NFL stadiums now, John, where it ain't looking so good when you actually look at it. So let's just jump into that right now. I was talking about this, and I basically put it out there that it's the draft and the struggles. What I meant by that is, how about this, John? The bottom 9, I've never seen us this bad in the NFL in terms of great teams and terrible teams. Here's the terrible teams. There are 9 of them. They've got 27 total wins. So in other words, you can do the math. 27 wins, 99 losses of those teams, of those 9 teams. We're talking about a lot of teams. There's the ones that are 2-12 and 3-10, all of the different numbers. They add up to something that looks pretty horrific. And as a matter of fact, one of the criticisms that I do have of the Vikings is they have played a lot of those teams that don't have very good scheduling, so you just don't know. And I'll even throw the 49ers in there, John, because when they played against the Niners, everybody thought they were the Niners, including myself. They're not. They've been hurt. They're not playing very well. They are on the fringe of maybe being a playoff team, but it's probably absolutely gone really at this point in time. But going a little bit forward, do you think this year there's only 2 quarterbacks scheduled to go in the first round? And are they going to be the first 2? Probably most likely, because the NFL is always going to do that. They're always going to go for the quarterback, which is the wrong position. You go for offensive linemen to protect a quarterback, and when you've done that, you get yourself into a spot. But the NFL, these GMs are idiots. They truly are. They just go for flash. So right now, I was looking at just about every site. Cam Ward is number 1. Shedeur Sanders, number 2. And the odd thing, John, is after that, there's no quarterbacks. But Colorado maybe should have had even a better record than they did, John, because the next guy is Travis Hunter, who we both know he and Shedeur both played for Colorado. You got 2 guys in the top 3 picks. I would think that maybe you'd do a little bit better than they did. And that's not a shot at Dion. I'm just saying their record should have been a little bit better because they've had an opportunity. They paid a lot of players. They've got a lot of NFL guys that are now coaches there that are building that thing up. But when you look at the Giants, the Panthers, the Raiders, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Cleveland, Jets, Bears, there's a lot of really pathetic teams out there. The Bears, by the way, have 4 wins. So they're at the top of this chart of crappy teams. But what do you think, John, about this going forward? Are they going to do the right thing and start drafting the guys that they need to have and need to pay to be into the position to then get a quarterback? And when you do you maybe wait for the guys like Sam Darnold, who over these years finally gets to the right place? He's got 3 great receivers, a great tight end, and a damn good offensive line.
Well, LSU, I'll just give you those 3 letters, Pete, because you and I both know that that's receiver U. Mm-hmm. I mean, the best receivers in football play at LSU. Period, full stop, end of story. Yeah. Now, tight ends are a different story. They have wideouts, and they run great patterns. They're fast, and they have good hands. Willie Gault, fast, not great hands. And I love Willie Gault. I love Willie Gault. He was right after my time with the Bears, Pete, and I've been with him at a lot of celebrity events, and he is a super nice guy. But man, you look at an LSU receiver versus Willie Gault, and it's night and day in terms of, getting production done. And that's only because of Willie's hands. Nobody could run with the guy. But I think overall, Pete, if you're in a position to take those first three, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, or Travis Hunter, you take them. Whoever the team is, no matter if they need them or not, I take them. But everybody else, all the 29 other teams, they better be paying attention to what you just said about offensive linemen, what I just said about wide receivers, and then drop right down into defensive linemen. Because, with the linebackers, you've said it forever, but with linebackers playing at 220 pounds, you better have a 330-pound tackle, at least one of them, up front, or those linebackers are going to get blown off and 50 roller skates.
Yeah. And when you look at a lot of the teams this year, John, some of the very best quarterbacks, when you go through every one of them, they probably have a pretty good running back as well. So even though everybody doesn't want to credit the running backs, they probably should, because take a look at Philadelphia. Take a look at what's going on with Baltimore. I mean, you can go take a look at the Minnesota Vikings. Aaron Jones has had a great year. He's a very good running back, and he can run over guys or run around them. He's got speed enough to do that. So I think a lot of teams, are starting to look back, and maybe they're understanding that having a running back. Look at Detroit. They had the 2. Now they're down to the 1, but they still have the 1. So they're doing the right thing, and I give Dan Campbell all the credit in the world, because he understands offense as good as any coach, whether people like to hear that or not. All right, John, how about the portal? Now, here's the problem. We've talked about NIL and the problems there, right? Does there need to be a salary cap for NIL? Abso-frickin-lutely. There's got to be, because they've got to figure out a way that the big can't continue to get even bigger because of NIL and the money that they've got. 20 million. Most everybody else has under 10 million. I don't know how fair that sounds to me. It doesn't sound that fair at all. So under the circumstances, they got to fix that. They also got to fix the portal, because what people don't know about the portal, John, is this. It opened up December 9th. It closes December 28th. Now, why wouldn't you push that back? Maybe it's January 1st through January 14th or January 20th. And here's why I say that. This year's a great example of why they didn't really think this out very well. Marshall had a phenomenal year this year. They were 10-3. They won 10 games. That's Randy Moss's old school, Marshall. And the problem is the coach took another job because he got an opportunity. He wanted to go to Southern Miss. He wants to go up to the next level. He goes to Southern Miss, right? Well, here's the problem with the portal. On December 9th, 29 guys jumped into the portal. Now, that's a bit of a problem for a 10-3 team that's going to go to a bowl game. They had to cancel going to the bowl game, John, the Independence Bowl where I played at. They had to cancel because 29 players are leaving the team. That's a problem. That's a huge problem, and they've got to get this figured out. It's one thing to have a couple players sit out. It's another for everybody to say, you know what, coach left. Hell, I'm going to find a new spot to go. And 29 players out of maybe 100 total, including walk-ons and everything. I mean, think about that. That is not a good picture, I don't think, for college football and how things are going. And by the way, they couldn't even find teams, John, because the problem is you've already got all the bowls taken care of. If you got the bowls taken care of, who's a 6-6 team left? Almost nobody. So you've got to start scraping and finding schools that actually don't even have a 500 record to try to fill this gap. I think that there's still a lot of problems out there with the portal and NIL.
I agree, but I'm going to say that, anyway, Louisiana Tech replaced Marshall, right, for the Independence Bowl. They basically got tapped when Marshall couldn't fulfill because they don't have 29 of those players. And maybe a few others just said, hell with it, I'm not going to play anyway. And the betting line would be nil. There would be no betting line after you. And Pete, let's be real. It's about ratings too. Yep. And you get no ratings for a game with 29 players that are not playing, and instead you're lined up with, a bunch of guys that haven't played that year. Nobody knows. Could they knock somebody off? Sure, they could. But the betting line would have to be astronomically against them.
Yeah.
So do they need some sort of a cap? I agree with you. The answer is yes. And it needs to move. It doesn't need to be fixed. The NFL salary cap is not fixed. It's based on the TV revenue and all the rest. Maybe they need to take a percentage of the TV revenue, Pete, even though, of course, we're not talking about the players getting that through the NIL, but maybe as a percentage of that, nobody can raise over X percent because of they could at least peg it to something. I don't know what the correct thing is, but I'll throw it out there and say, peg it to TV revenue. And as that goes up, the salary cap goes up.
I love it. Yep. I think that's a good answer. And that's where I would go too. If I was in that position, I would say, hey, look, we got to do something because this isn't going to work for very long. And I think the same thing with this portal. They got to do something. I don't know how they do it, but to your point with Louisiana Tech, what a great call, right? You're right in the state of Louisiana already. So at least you'll have some people in the stands, hopefully, because there's nothing worse than those bowl games where you look at the stadium and it's like, it seats 50,000 and there might be 18,000 people there. It's like, holy crap, that don't look too good.
Yeah, that's when it all comes down to how well those teams travel, as they say, the fans going. All right, folks, we appreciate all of you joining us. Make sure you are aware it is the last day for Adambeam. That's invest.adambeamtech.com. Last day you can do it, folks. And as usual, our little QR code in the corner of the screen lets you scan that and sign up for Las Vegas, March 22nd. Pete and I will be back tomorrow with another Rebels Edge at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.